Morning. Hello, beautiful people. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Because you are beautiful. You know that, right? You understand these things, right? And how are you today? How are you this wonderful day? Good morning. All you gorgeous people already in the comments. I appreciate that so much. And oops, hold on. Something else is kicking off here. Listen, when you're like a one-woman band, all manner of things happen, right? Good morning. Good morning, Shin. Good morning, Crazy Bunny, our two beautiful and wonderful mods. We love them loads. We do. Let me make sure that we are being recorded here. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. How are you this fine morning, Friday, 26th of July, 2024? It's 9 a.m. on the dot. British summertime, wherever you are. Thank you and welcome. Whether you're joining us live or whether you're joining us later, or welcome. You know, I love you all. What a week this has been, kids, since Monday. Absolutely insane. We had the Olympics kicked off in Paris to much controversy. A man at Manchester Airport had his head kicked in by Greater Manchester Police. The World Health Organization has put out its begging bowl. The digital and data bill is back. Oh, yes, it is. Homelessness is sadly and unsurprisingly on the rise. Richard D. Hall got to have his say in court, which is unsurprising. No, rather, which is surprising. And family annihilator Chris Watts is blaming the mistress for it all. There's a shocker, right? And let us not forget Gerry McCann, who is out there demanding that the government continue to do their bidding. But the computer, in the form of Keir Starmer, says no. All this and more coming up on the liveliest of live streams this side of, well, goodness knows where. Let me see how you are all doing in the comments this morning. How are you, beautiful people? How are you? Blimey. There's a whole load of you. Healing the silence. It seems like I am the first one to leave a comment this time. If you have that Friday feeling, then you must have a Friday boogie. Just be careful you don't knock your hip out of place. That feels very sort of age-sensitive comment, healing the silence. Morning, Kath. Morning, Synchronized Soul. And Cavan, good morning to you. Cloudy in Devon, once more, in the worst summer I've ever seen, equals global warming. My ... Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Stephen Kelly, good morning, folks. Do you just love waking up with me, Stephen? Well, I love waking up with you all. I'm that kind of girl. We have an arrangement, says Stephen. People are in a cheeky mood. Fox says, morning, no sun here in London. Absolutely. Oh, actually, well, I'm in Teddington, so that's sort of southwest Greater London. We got some sunshine coming out here, Fox. Yes, we have. And I just want to say that oftentimes I don't get to see all of your wonderful comments, obviously, while I'm on the live stream. And it's only later afterwards that I get to see them. And you know, it's like sometimes it's like, well, how did that conversation happen without me even being aware it was taking place? So please forgive me. Today can be, not today, it can be a bit mad on the live stream when you're trying to sort of multi-juggle, but I always give it my best shot. Oh, absolutely, I do. And Craig said, right, let's effing go. Craig is ready. Craig is up and at 'em this morning. Oh, yes, he is. Oh, yes, he is. Good morning, Peter Folder. Morning, Cheryl. Morning, everybody. Catch up later, she says. Hello there, Marsh girl. Good morning, everyone. Sunny here on the North Somerset coast, but cool. I mean, it is nice and sunny at the moment here, and I am looking forward to spending some time in the garden this weekend. I haven't had an opportunity to do that properly for ages, although I did clean up some leaves. Shock. But we sort of inherited a very mature garden from the previous people who lived here, and it is fabulous. It's absolutely gorgeous. I don't really need to do a great deal other than keep cutting things back, because otherwise it resembles a jungle out there, and I love it though. I love it. Yes, I do. Oh, yes, I do. London lady, good morning to you. How are you doing this morning? And Merv, hello, Merv, Angie, Mac, Grand Risings, all risers. Not going to talk weather. Shiters. Says Angie. Is it like that, Ange? Is it? Good morning, Gwyneth, gorgeous, and Drumstick, our lovely drum. Jenny from the block. I bet it's not that Jenny from the block, though. Hello, photo booth. Good morning from sunny Norfolk. And Gillian, a sunny morning in Belfast. Lovely Belfast. It's live, Jim, but morning, Sonia. Have a great broadcast. I appreciate that, Jim. Yes, I do. If you are actually Jim, you're probably not, because that's an expression, right? Annette, good morning to you. Joe, good morning from sunny Leeds. I see we've got very mixed weather in the UK. Tell me where you are and let me know. Yes, let me know how your weather is, right? I love you too. Back to roots. Yes, I do. Good morning, Christopher Drew and Mike and Lily and Jerry and Paul and Jocelyn and Pink Pisces. Good morning to you, sweetheart. Morning, Shug. And Kenneth, good morning to you. York, North Yorkshire. An esoteric night. Good morning to you. Dr. Kim Pirelli, beautiful sunny in the northeast. Lyra Davis says, good morning all. AMZ 6904, morning everyone. Sunny morning in Jarrow today. Lovely Jarrow. Jarrow is now Jarrow, obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Jarrow become very famous for the Jarrow marching, where they were obviously marching against inequalities and workers and for better worker rights? Maria's in Australia and she's cold. 34 hidden names for MSG. Don't know what that means. Tara, what are you saying? Can you look at the inquest into the young woman who died of ME after a bad hospital, please? I so well remember you championing the ME cause back in the day. ME is the silent killer. I think it is one of the most devastating illnesses there is because nobody can see it. And the problem is when you can't see that somebody is going through some kind of sickness or disability, you can we've seen it, right? We've often seen it where people are like, oh, you're just, you're swinging the lead. That's not really what's happening, etc. And ME is one of those things. So yes, absolutely, Tara, I will look into that. Wade has managed to catch the live stream. We love that. Sunny in Northern Ireland, says Misty Beethoven, which is great. And AA, AA is off. Are you a toy boy in your 30s? Because he's offering himself up. That's very kind of you, AA. I appreciate that greatly. I really do. What's that? We Fat Sugar's going on about monosodium glutamate. Where did that come from? Am I missing something? And the Brawl Box is top of the morning. Canterbury, fine morning. Fine morning indeed. And how are you, Sarah and Armand and Bessie Ford and Jacqueline and AJB Smithson and the Black Fingernail? And on and on. We got some great and wonderful names kicking off here. Good morning to you, Brett. How you doing? Paul Cardin said, my wife has had ME for the last 18 years. It's been tough. It's terrible. It's absolutely horrendous for people to live with. Mixed bag in Trafford, says George. Is that right, George? How are the police up there? They're always problematic, aren't they? Greater Manchester Police. They've been in the news a lot lately, haven't they? We are going to be shortly bringing in the very lovely commentator Jim Ferguson, who's going to join me for a news review. Still a lot of kind of mixed reports coming out about that Manchester attack. What we're being told now is that a mid-air row involving the mother of the man who was kicked in the head by police. There was some kind of issue going on there. Family sources have claimed they were defending their mother that day. They were taken into custody by police. So what we obviously saw was a man had his head stamped on by a police officer. We're now being told that that man now has a cyst on his brain. The officer has been suspended from duty after a video emerged. And obviously, sometimes we can't know the background of what's taken place, what has led to this. But here's the thing. When I see somebody lying prone on the floor and they clearly are not in the position where they are able to attack anybody, and then I see a police officer give their head a good kick in, I think there might be a problem there, right? I'm not saying anything about the backstory. I have no idea. I'm saying what we've all been able to see, what we've all been able to witness. And I find it quite shocking that so many people on social media who claim to be freedom fighters are like, yeah, give them a good kick in the head and all this kind of stuff. Are you mad? Are you absolutely mad? Are you not aware that, what is going on here? And Lyra said the officer will simply be redistributed. Morning, Sonia. Cloudy chemtrails in. Where are you? You're in the Wirral. Subject worthy of look into for health equals earthling. Good morning, peeps. Please don't mention the NHS today. They make me weep, says Marie. Marshall has fibromyalgia, ME. I keep quiet as people think I'm lazy. I lost my dream job, signed off work, medically retired in 2016. I am very sorry to hear that, my love. Yes, I am. I'm very sorry to hear that indeed. It's absolutely devastating to lives. I don't underestimate the impact of ME at all. Not at all. Morning, Tina. You're in Wicklow, Ireland, right? A bag of cans production, says Craig. Craig and Zoe, of course, are from Only Cans, and they're going to be doing a new Madeleine McCann live stream soon. I don't have the details yet, but I'm sure we will. Reiki Rainbow Hands, pause and more. Good morning. I appreciate you too. Marsh goes, it totally wipes her out for months. Yes, it does. Just know this clown will get a massive payout, says Jamie. Jamie is not impressed. Not impressed. And the fact is, we don't know the backstory, right? But all I know is when I see somebody's head being kicked in, there's a problem there. There's a real problem there. And that's my position on it. But I await to see what is really happening in regards to all of that. We are now joined by the lovely Jim Ferguson. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Jim. Here he is. Lovely Jim. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Sonia. What a great way to start the day being on with you again. I've missed you.
Isn't it? Jim, the last time I saw you was when I was still at TNT. Well, not saw you, but the last time we talked was when I was still at TNT. So it's absolutely wonderful to welcome you to our live stream. We have stacks of people in the comments who are ready to hear what you have to say. Jim, I want you to start by telling people about Freedom Train International, because I think it's really important, because what you're doing is you're linking up like-minded people all around the world. And I think that's, in some respects, quite unprecedented for the type of organization that you are. Talk to us.
Well, thank you once again. It's a real pleasure to be here and to speak to your magnificent listeners. I mean, I know that you've moved away from TNT Radio. I enjoyed my time with you there, but this is great. And yes, Freedom Train International is fastest growing freedom movement in the world now. And basically, I spent 15 months reaching out to people all around the world, a lot of people in the United States and Canada, Australia, New Zealand, of course, the UK. So what's happened is we launched just a few short months ago. We did it on the anniversary of the freedom movement in Canada, the truckers, the Freedom Convoy, in honor of them, because they're just magnificent people. They led the way in the pushback against these unparalleled mandates and restrictions. And we're building up now, and we're uniting patriots, people that love their countries, that want to actually take action, do something good. We are the new resistance, but we're peaceful. We're just simply identifying what's going on, and we're pushing back in a peaceful way, but in a very effective way. And when people in our respective countries realize you're not alone, because we felt we've been alone over the last 3-4 years, and there are millions of us. So, it's absolutely delighted to be here. I've got a great team in place, and things are really moving forward full steam ahead on Freedom Train International.
Love to hear that, Jim, because I do think we've entered a different era now. I think we went through that awful dark period from 2020 onwards, and it's almost like people have been given some new energy. It's like, and the fact that you're linking up with all of these people, have you seen a change in, in the short period that you've been operating?
Oh, for sure. I think people see the vision that we have.
Yeah.
I'm the founder, but we're not a top-down organization. We're a grassroots movement that has sprung up. I've led the way. I've given the vision there, but there's people now in multiple countries, and I've been focusing on Europe a lot over the last 2 months. I've been to the Netherlands 3 times. I've been to Geneva, Switzerland, Denmark, Ireland, and I'm about to head to Norway, France, Germany, and then Sweden, of course, as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on, but we're linking in with people who already have movements, who already have freedom movements. Some of them are well established, but they're more sort of regional or country based. So we're talking to lots of people. Sort of Freedom Train International now kind of is acting as the umbrella for a lot of groups. I had some fantastic conversations with people in New Zealand and Australia on a simultaneous Zoom. And there's a huge amount of momentum building. And once again, it's about bringing like-minded people together, people that like to live their lives in peace. We don't want big government. We want decentralized power. We want to do our own thing in our own way. And we're pushing back against censorship, disinformation and misinformation from the globalists, of course,
Yeah.
because that's what a lot of it is, the captured mainstream media. And I pay tribute to you, Sonia, and your channel for fighting for the truth. And I'm once again delighted to be on with you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. We don't get much more big government and globalism than the US presidential elections, obviously. And Kamala Harris. Now, we're hearing that Melinda Gates has endorsed Kamala Harris. Are you endorsing her, Jim?
Well, no, I'm certainly not. She's not one of my favorite people at all. And the very fact that Melinda Gates, who's obviously the former wife of Bill Gates, should be raising alarm bells all over the place. Look, these globalists are throwing everything they can to stop the re-election of Donald Trump. Whether you like him or you don't, the point is he loves America. He loves the American people. My channel is an international channel. I have a big audience in the United States and Canada, of course, North America as well. So we are watching this. You're right to raise it, because what is going to be coming in November is probably unprecedented. We've seen an attempted assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. It came incredibly close. It was shocking, although we always suspected they might try and do something. The globalists, including people like the Gates Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they're backing their candidate, and they are terrified that Donald Trump might just do it. I think he's going to do it, Sonia, if I'm being honest.
Do you? I mean, the thing is, not being funny, but Kamala Harris seems like hugely incompetent. She seems to talk in cliches for most of the time. And we know that, like, the big hitters like Obama, I think you commented on this actually, has not thus far endorsed her. Do you think he will?
Well, he might be under pressure to do it, but the very fact that he hasn't, I mean, we've all been aware of Joe Biden's weakness and his lack of vision, his incompetence, really, but also the fact that he's deeply corrupted. You just need to look at the Biden laptop to know just how deep that corruption runs. I actually don't think that Joe Biden has really been running the show for probably his entire presidency, if I'm being honest. And I think there's a lot of people would agree with me that actually Obama probably is the power behind the throne there. And he often bragged about how he would like a third term, and if only somebody could go in, he could be working behind the scenes. I mean, he's on record, he's on film saying that. So I think that probably actually did happen. The fact he hasn't endorsed Kamala Harris is really interesting. And certainly there are probably competitive powers going on within the DNC in America, the Democratic Party. And I think we haven't seen anything yet. There's so much happening just now. But basically, there was a soft coup took place. And I mean, they removed Biden, the president, from power because they chose to do it. I think that just goes to show the weakness of Joe Biden, though, because he allowed it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I'm not even sure that he was aware it was happening. And it's awful because I think what we were witnessing largely, and I've said this repeatedly, I genuinely believe that we were witnessing elder abuse, Jim. It was like his wife's ambition was greater than her husband's ability. And that's what we appeared to be watching. It was horrible, actually. I loathed the man, loathed him with a passion, but I still hated seeing what was being done.
Yeah, I mean, it was clear for everybody. I mean, anybody that had an ear to hear the things he was saying, the mumbling, the inconsistencies. I mean, the man was not fit to be president. But the biggest danger, of course, is that the way the military in the US is structured, he has his finger on the nuclear button. And quite simply, a man of his incompetence, whether it's medically is the reason or not, nevertheless, you're talking big consequences if he decides to go and start launching nukes around. So really, I think in reality, I don't think he was even capable of that. I think Obama was probably the one that was really pulling the strings there. And who knows, maybe Obama doesn't like Kamala. There could be all sorts of reasons for his not endorsing her, but it certainly is interesting.
And I do, because she's not actually the official candidate yet. She hasn't been announced as that, has she?
No, there seems to be a lack of support for her, and of course the fact that Obama's not done that will probably have an effect on a lot of other people. Obama was a great orator. I didn't particularly like him. I certainly didn't trust him. Right. But you've got to take into account the fact he spoke very well, and he does have a lot of influence. We saw that here in the UK and London just a few months ago. Just before I went off to Geneva. And that was where he flew in for secret closed-door meetings with Rishi Sunak when he was Prime Minister. A former president having closed-door secret meetings with a sitting Prime Minister in the UK it does show that there's a lot more going on than we think.
Absolutely. And that is the reality. And that's the importance of what you do, Jim, because you don't accept at face value that these people are our leaders. Not for a second. You understand how globalism works. So talking about which, let us move to the new Digital Information and Smart Data Bill, which in fact is not new at all, because this replaces the former Data Protection and Digital Bill that the Tories had on the table and failed to pass when they were in office. What can you tell us about this, Jim?
Well, one interesting thing about this legislation is it looks like the data protection officers are being completely gotten rid of. And this is also, I mean, it sounds all right. It sounds okay. It's for economic growth. It's for, stability.
Yes,
It's
come
for,
here, children. It's a bit like the child
yeah,
catcher kind of stuff, isn't it? They feed
yeah.
us. Yeah,
Come on, have fun with us.
that's
Yeah,
right.
have some sweets. Have some sweets. Yeah. No, it sounds all right on the surface for competitiveness, economic growth. I mean, all these things on the surface sound fine, but when you start to understand that really this is the mechanism that's coming in now, the globalists have a new financial system that they're ready to roll out. I've had amazing
Right
interviews.
there.
Yeah, with Hester Bai. She's a top lawyer and investigative fraud investigator from the Netherlands. She's written a very comprehensive, very complex book on the corruption of the banks, ING, Mario Draghi, the EU, the Commission, all these top players. She's exposed fraud of 2 trillion Europe wide. And it's drawing a lot of attention. So that's all linked back to the 2008 financial credit crisis that was engineered because they had a shortage of collateral. So what's happening is what we might see over the course of the next few weeks, and this bill is sort of paving the way for central bank digital currencies, digital ID. That's ramping up. A friend of mine in Canada just sent me a link just a little while ago to do with the new vaccine passports that they're going to be getting rolled out across all European nations and probably enforced as much as they can, certainly, although I think there's going to be a lot of pushback. So this data protection bill, it's been in the offing for quite some time. So
Yeah.
you're quite correct. It's not a new thing at all.
And the thing is, I was looking through it because obviously some of the things that I objected to previously, they're almost certainly still there. But of course, this has only just been mentioned in the new King's speech last week. So they've yet to publish the new bill. But what we had before was where they could do things like snooping on your bank account without permission. Now, that is already allowed, but you have to apply. It isn't something that they can just do, but these people want to just be able to do it. They want to be able to go into your bank account and just have a snoop around and see if there's inappropriate amounts of money entering your account. But this is all, the central theme appears to me to be, as you say, really about a digital identity and a digital wallet. And what they're saying to us is this is going to make it easier for you to access services online. And no, it won't be mandatory. But Jim, do we believe them when they tell us things won't be mandatory?
Not at all. What it means is the opposite of that. They're going to try to soft soap us and get that introduced and try to get everybody convinced that this is a good thing. It certainly isn't. The other thing about this bill is it's going to give scientists the ability to have access to personal data that they have an interest in. If you take police and investigations, or you take the security services, for example, MI5 for an example, they have to apply due diligence and they have to get court orders to mount surveillance on people's emails, and there's a due process. What this is doing is really giving probably anybody that's working within the establishment carte blanche to go in and start snooping around. So it's not a good thing at all. And in terms of privacy, human rights laws and legislations, this is contravening a lot of that. So whether or not this actually goes forward in its current form or whether it's amended, we don't know. The problem is that the official opposition, the Conservatives that have been left after the massacre of the electoral wipeout and the July the 4th elections, I don't have much confidence in them because they are all globalists as well. They're all sold out to the whole system.
It's just ridiculous because so what we're really talking about here is a widespread use of your personal data coming together under a digital sphere and with the use of AI technology. None of that sounds particularly about our good, in fact. And this to me is like this is the surveillance society, but with bells on, Jim. I think this is going further than they've ever gone before, not just the snooping in bank accounts, but also, as you say, scientists can share our data and our information. And this is for commercial purposes. They want to sell it to us, this idea, as you say, that it's all good. Come closer, children. This is to help you. This is to make your life better. But this is really about them all making a heck of a lot of money off of our personal data and us not having any say-so in that, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's why we're pushing internationally now to get people ready for whatever is coming and to look at having very serious looks at alternative ways of living where we do not have to comply or be part of this system, because it's a surveillance system, it's a surveillance state. And we don't have to be part of that. We can connect with local food producers, connect with local farmers. We're doing that internationally now, and we're showing people the way to go. And I think that is something that appeals to a lot of people. We don't really need them. They need us. And if we all step up and say we do not comply, we're not going along with it en masse, and that's important. Because if a few of us do it, we'll get taken out, we'll get picked off. It's the usual thing, lawfare, whatever. But if everybody takes a principled stand and says, we do not comply, we're not going to do this, you might find that they would be forced to back down.
Jim, I love that. You've started us off with a power to the people kind of clarion call. And that is exactly what we're about around here. Everybody, I will be putting a link so that you can find out more about Jim if you don't already know. This is the very lovely Jim Ferguson. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Jim. Have a wonderful weekend. Take good care of yourself. Isn't he lovely?
Thank you, Sonia.
Take care.
Thank you.
Speak
Take
soon.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yes, he is. He is. Absolutely. So, yeah, that's what we're dealing with, people. So it's not changed. It's worse than making money, says HK Very. It's extreme control and restructure. Hey, Marie had to take a phone call. Excuse me, I had to take a phone call. I'm back now. Lyra, I agree with you. If my data is making money, then I should get a slice of that pie. Absolutely. Peter, Catherine, Shin, Drumstick, London Lady all say, thanks, Jim. Civilization is ancient and wicked, says Hugh. Thanks, Jim. You have a relaxed manner, says Merv. Peace out, Jimbo, says the Count of Saint Germain. Right. Let me turn to looking at my own news, see what we've got on the go here. So Keir Starmer, the socialist, really showed his totalitarian nature this week by suspending 7 backbenchers who voted against a number of things, including the 2-child benefit cap. And here's the thing, is that oftentimes the kind of removal of the whip, which is what it's called, is reserved for those who are in the cabinet. But for him to take out backbenchers who disagree with him is really troubling. And I think it really tells us so much about who he really is. Yeah, I do. I think so. I see that the WHO's Director General, I'm going to give it a shot how to pronounce his name, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, has his begging bowl out with a video asking for money. He tells us that history teaches us that the next pandemic is a matter of when, not if. That's him telling you it's all in hand. Oh, yes. And yet the world remains unprepared for the next pandemic, he says, just as it was unprepared for C-19. Now is the time to invest in preparing for the pandemics, plural, so they have many planned, of the future, and to strengthen the global architecture for health emergency preparedness and response. The pandemic fund, there's the begging bowl, is a critical component of that architecture, as countries have affirmed in their negotiations for the new WHO pandemic agreement. Already, the pandemic fund is making a difference, he says. First round already being implemented. The second round has received proposals from 125 countries of more than 2.5 billion US dollars towards the fund. They always can find money when they want to, don't they, for their funds or for Ukraine or for the Middle East. We urge donors to provide resources for Strategy Fund from 2014 to 2029. And here's the thing, when I kept trying to type Tedros into my iPad, it kept changing it to tedious. And I think that just about sums it up, frankly. He is indeed a very tedious, if dangerous individual, and we should be very, very careful about him. No let up with these culling fools, says Jilly. I nearly read something else there, Jilly Poof. Shedding to each other. It's live. Jim says, I've been preparing, I've been relearning the birdie dance. Oh, I love our live chat. Best live chatters around. Yes, Shin kept changing it to tedious. Absolutely. Shug said there is no Labour or Conservative. There is a uni party that behaves much more like a cartel of some sort. Couldn't agree more. Shug, you get my vote. Stand, right? Callous, like all of them, says Rowie. Indeed. And I see that Gerry McCann has piped up. He, of course, being the father of missing Madeleine McCann, who went missing in 2007. And ever since then, her parents, who really should have been done at the very least for negligence, and their friends, yes, yes, yes. They've been fated and treated like celebrities by the British media, but that is not enough for the McCanns. Oh, no, no, no. Gerry McCann popped up yesterday on a TV programme saying that we must proceed with the second part of the Levenson inquiry. For those who may not come from these fair isles, the Levenson inquiry was an inquiry into the culture, standards and ethics of the British press. It examined the relationship between the British press and politicians, of which nothing has changed as a consequence of it. And Gerry McCann is demanding that Keir Starmer respects and sticks to what he had previously agreed, and that is a Levenson 2, which would examine the relationship between police and the press. Gerry said the Labour Party made promises to us alongside dozens of other victims of press intrusion that the second part of the Levenson inquiry would proceed. Only Levenson Part 2 will provide justice to those of us who have suffered at the hands of the press. Gerry McCann, you might want to say you've suffered at the hands of the press, but trust me, if the press were treating you as they would have treated a single working class mother in your position, you would then see that you've been treated like celebrities and taken very well care of. Oh, yes, you have. But here's what I know about the police when it comes to the McCanns, because that's what this second part would examine. And that is the McCanns have done very well from the police as they have done from the press. So, yes, they have. If they were not Kate and Gerry McCann, they would have long been charged with neglect, at the very least, as would their friends. Kate and Gerry McCann, they gave evidence at the first Levenson inquiry and absolutely played the victims. But the victim is the missing child. That's it. Bottom line. And Kate and Gerry McCann have done very, very well out of it. And yes, Craig, Gerry courted the press. There's interviews of him pleading for more press. Madeleine went missing May 2007, and by August 2007, he was in Edinburgh giving an interview. Can't remember who with, one of the BBC presenters. And he was absolutely reveling in his new role of being a media spokesman. That's why he got involved with Hacked Off with Hugh Grant and the others. And in the same way as Kate McCann latched on to the very sad plights of missing people, Kate and Gerry McCann, to me, have always been interlopers in these situations and have never been forced to deal with what has happened, truly. And here's the thing, what's interesting is, so that they did that kind of shout out to Keir Starmer, you know, basically what you're going to do, stick to your promises. And he said, it's absolutely brilliant, we've set out in our manifesto, sets out our priorities, and the second half of Levenson is not among them. And I was in shock. Is this the actual first British Prime Minister to ever say no to the McCanns? Because there's a whole plethora of British Prime Ministers who have brought us to the point where the British taxpayers are paying 14 million plus for a crime that didn't even happen in this country. Is it the fact that Starmer will not kowtow to the McCanns as previous Prime Ministers have? Is it because examining the press is more problematic for Keir Starmer and his globalist government than upsetting the McCanns? I suspect the latter is the truth here, the reality of it. Craig Campbell said, in my opinion, Gerry McCann is publicly speaking now for the first time in 5 years to protect himself. He knows this case on Christian Bruckner is about to collapse. And, you know, I've always said, I'm not accusing anybody, but clearly the McCanns and their very middle-class friends were treated very differently, very differently. And to anybody else in that similar situation, talking about which it was actually the anniversary on Wednesday of the disappearance of Ben Needham. Ben Needham, another British child who disappeared, was a baby, a toddler. I mean, Ben was 3, but still extremely young. Disappeared, never been found. Not even a millionth of a percentage of support that the McCanns have had for missing Madeleine has the Needhams had. Not even. And Shin said he will have his own weird little scandals that Keir will need monies for. What? Andrew Bridgen had a role in the McCanns? I don't know anything about that. That's interesting because obviously they're all from Leicester. That's interesting. I should look into that, Kim. Don't know anything about that. Yes, Mary. Little Ben. Yes, Cavan. Plethora is not a word one hears often enough. Well, stick around with me, mate, and you'll hear lots of words that you've probably not heard often enough, and some I even invent as I go along. That's the kind of girl I am. By the way, let me show you these. I was looking for hiking boots this week. Look at my new hiking boots. Look at them. I needed new hiking boots. The podiatrist said, get some good hiking boots because I walk a lot with my dog. And just recently, I've been able to walk as much as I've wanted to because I've had problems with my feet. So my podiatrist said, get some good hiking boots. So I set off this week to get some good hiking boots. And I went into a number of outdoor stores and tried them on, but I have quite specific requirements, including they must be vegan and synthetic and not leather. And even though some of the actual best hiking boots are leather, but this kind of person I am. Anyway, as luck would have it, I happened across this outdoor store and I went in, and the guy on the shoes gave me this really funny look, and I just thought he took an instant dislike to me. He kind of looked at me weird, like he'd seen a ghost or something. Anyway, I found the boots that I wanted. And I said, do you have these? And I gave him my size, and he went off and he came back and he said, you're that journalist, aren't you? You're Sonia Poulton. And I'm like, yes. And he's like, I watch your work. And he'd watch Paedophiles in Parliament and my McCann documentaries. And it was so brilliant. I was like so buzzed because that just doesn't happen. I mean, I do have some people sometimes in the street who come up to me and go, are you that journalist, Sandra Poulton or Sophie Poulton or stuff like that? Or, Sandra Pontin or stuff like that. But he knew my name properly and he knew my work, and it was absolutely lovely. And I got a very, very big buzz from it. And my boots are great. It was so cute, Crazy Bunny. And we had a brilliant conversation about, royalty and politicians and Jimmy Savile and corruption. No, he wasn't starstruck at all. Shin, not at all. He was just like, I think he was just a bit shocked that I'd rocked up, and he recognized me, and I rocked up, and then he fitted me with the most brilliant boots and made me walk up and down this kind of fake wall, which was brilliant. Cavan, I did look at a plethora of shoes. Cavan loves this. Oh, Merv, that's very sweet of you. Yes. Yes, we now have a journalist character, Sandra Ponton. Absolutely, we do. We do. And, by the way, I received a new report from the National Audit Office. Not happy about that. The National Audit Office, if you're not familiar with it, is the UK's independent so-called public spending watchdog. They've just delivered a new report on homelessness. Absolutely scary. Right? The effectiveness of government in tackling homelessness. And and this is for the UK, and what they tell us is that statutory homelessness has reached its highest level since records began. There are 112,600 households in temporary accommodation, more families with children, 2,960 unlawfully housed in bed and breakfast for longer than 6 weeks. The 2.4 billion spent by local authorities dealing with homelessness in 2022 to 2023 accounted for 60% of overall spending on housing. And for some authorities, this is becoming financially unsustainable. 1.6 billion of that money was spent on temporary accommodation. And they say that they found a variety of factors that have contributed to the increase in homelessness. This includes a lack of social housing and affordable private rented accommodation, the rising cost of rent, less secure tenancies, and welfare reforms. All of those things are absolutely true. And but they have failed to mention immigration, and we have to be real here. Is that if you have an influx, a plethora, Cavan, if you have an influx of people and you are not firming up the infrastructure of a nation, there are going to be problems. Yes, there are. And what the National Audit Office is saying is we recommend that government adopts a cross-department long-term strategy and sets public targets for tackling homelessness, as well as simplifying funding, focusing on prevention and improving the quality of temporary accommodation. Now, a lot of that is unfortunately just words, and they're just words because the real serious problem is we are simply not replenishing the housing stock. The housing stock that was first sold off in Margaret Thatcher's government and actually was bought by a number of her ministers who then went on to privately rent social housing out at extraordinary market prices. And we have never replenished the housing stock. And that is really probably the absolute number one problem we are dealing with here in terms of homelessness. But there are so many other factors as well. The fact that we have an increase and a rise in homelessness, why are they not looking at the impact of C-19, lockdowns, families being separated, people unable to socialize, people losing their jobs because people were going out of business. Remember, it was the biggest transference of wealth in our lifetime. In our lifetimes. Yes, it was. And none of this seems to be mentioned as factors, which is extraordinary. Jamie says, should never have allowed right to buy, all sold to the greedy and not replaced. Exactly. It's terrible stuff. And Shug said, it's really not about money anymore. Surely recent events show us that. It's all about power and control now. The money system is finished. This is the transition to serfdom. And sadly, I have to agree, which is why we have to keep highlighting it. Rowie, it's true. They do not care. They expect people to work till they drop. Thank you, Craig. Love you, Sandra Ponton, says Craig. Thank you very much. Smorgasbord of problems by the sounds of it, Sonia. Cavan, I'm loving this. Me and Cavan, we are so locked in this morning, aren't we, Cavan? Healing the Silence says, the amount of times I thought of giving up everything and buy a caravan instead. Been there. Like, I haven't bought a caravan. I'm really into the whole idea of a tiny home. I watch tiny home videos a lot. I'm very interested in them. I like the idea of mobile homes, of homes on wheels that I can move around. I like all those things. Sorry, keep hitting my poor microphone. Dominique says, Labour Conservative are the same. Yes, they are, my love. Oh, yes, they are. Right. Yes, serfdom is being rolled back, and we mustn't allow it. Let's have a quick look at the Olympics, by the way. What madness is taking place there? Obviously, opening ceremony. And isn't it interesting? Obviously, they carry the Olympic flame right up until the Olympic destination, right? And so we saw some incredibly inspiring people like Paralympian Kevin Piet. He's a paraplegic since an accident at 11. And, you know, as slow as he was walking, he was carrying that Olympic torch. It was absolutely wonderful to see. And then at the final destination, guess what? Because this is about diversity, folks, right? Guess what we had? Two white blokes, probably middle class as well. But on top of that, one of them was a drag queen, right? And they taught to us, no, women aren't being erased. No, of course not. But we'll still have two blokes at the final finishing of the Olympic, where the Olympic flame has to be. And we'll dress one of them up for diversity. Oh, yes, indeed. So we've seen a lot of controversy around this, of course, haven't we? We saw that horse woman and Olympian Charlotte Dujardin, animal abuse in horse dressage. Why do people think that there isn't animal abuse? Like, we saw her repeatedly whipping a horse, right? We saw that. And that was leaked, I believe, by a Dutch whistleblower. I mean, presumably because, you know, they want to nobble her, but whatever the reason. So she released a statement saying she was withdrawing from the Olympics after a video emerged showing her making an error of judgment. Mate, that wasn't an error of judgment. I bet that there are a million occasions, Miss Charlotte, where you have whipped animals. I'm certain of it, right? I'm absolutely certain of it. And it was, you know, excessive. I mean, back and forward, back and forward, back and forward. And then I saw another video of her whacking a horse. They do this. These people do this. They are not animal lovers. Don't anybody try and convince me they are. And I have to say a big shout out to lovely Jules. Jules is a regular viewer around here. And I love Jules. And Jules is an animal lover. And in fact, Jules, I hope you don't mind me saying, but your Twitter description, I absolutely love it, is shut down zoos, marine parks, and anywhere else animals are kept as entertainment. There's no excuse for animal abuse. And I mean, that is the reality, isn't it? It's like dressage is very, very precise. Horses do not parade around like that by nature. They have to be whipped and beaten to do that. And Lester Piggott was also cruel to his horses, says Julio. And the thing is, a lot of these horse riders are. You see this, you see spur marks in the side of these horses. They're ripped and torn. These horses are in a terrible state. They absolutely are. I would take anything like that out of the Olympics, anything to do with animals. Absolutely disgusting and abhorrent, but it's not the first controversy at the Olympics, of course. There is the Steven van der Veld controversy. He is a Dutch Olympian. Well, he's actually, well, he is now. He's always been Dutch, but he's an Olympian now. Volleyball. He's a lot of people. He raped a 12-year-old British girl when he was 19. A lot of people, like Paula Radcliffe, as one example, are of the mind state that, well, he's done the time for his crime. So, you know, what about rehabilitation? The biggest problem, of course, is putting him on a world stage and honoring him. That is a real problem, and treating him like a deity and as if he's God. But I saw this brilliant thread on X. I don't get to say that very often, but it was from somebody who has worked to rehabilitate. Her name is Chayla McDonald. She said, as a believer in rehabilitation and someone who studied and has worked in both adult and juvenile corrections, here are some things to consider. She does this incredible thread, which I found to be the best and most insightful analysis of this situation, because there's a lot of noise. Like, yes, you know, Paula, what's her face, said those things, but who really cares? We need to focus on why has this man been allowed to in the first place? And it turns out that he is far from the first Olympian with this kind of track record. In fact, at the last calculation, there have been something like 27 Olympians with criminal records involving attack and abuse. So he is far from alone. So it is not like he's setting a precedent, sadly. He's just following what they allow. And I just think it's really, really troubling. What are you saying there, Pink Diamond? I think future generations are going to look at things like dressage and horse racing the way we look at dog fights today. I agree. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, I don't think for a second that Steven van der Veld should be in the Olympics. I think it is absolutely wrong. We have no idea, really, about the survivor of his abuse, how she is now, how this is impacting her. A lot of people are projecting on her that she may be feeling this way or maybe feeling that, but ultimately we don't know. But one thing I'm fairly certain of is putting him on an international stage in a role where he is seen as a leader. And the thing about the Olympics is that there is a list of criteria. One of them is you have to be a role model. He is not a role model, and neither of that 20 plus that I'm also talking about. And so while we know absolutely nothing about the young woman, and this was 10 years ago, so she'll now be 22, we know very little about her. As I say, what I'm fairly certain of is putting him on a world stage and treating him like God will not be helping her in any way, shape or form. And I don't think it ultimately helps any survivors. It all feels a bit wrong. And by the way, yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you, Jocelyn? Well, and the thing is, he's on the sex offenders register in the UK, right? And it's just awful. My reason for boycotting, says Marie, is that it? And some love the whole show and being part of it, says the Blue Nomad. And by the way, there's that year again, 2030. And France has been, once again, conditionally picked as the host of the 2030 Winter Olympics. That was on Wednesday. They must deliver key financial guarantees in a timeline that has been set out by the ICO, the International Olympic Committee. And French President Emmanuel Macron, he who was groomed as a child by his school teacher and then apparently married her, although there is obviously a court case going on at this moment in time, which disputes that his wife is indeed a her. But French President Emmanuel Macron, he said that I confirm the full commitment of the French nation and assure you that I will ask the next Prime Minister to include not only this guarantee, but also an Olympic law in the priorities of the new government. 7 years ago, we made the same commitment for the Paris 2024 Summer Games, and we delivered. We will do the same. Mate, it's only just started. Hold your horses, right? What? Please tell my dog Trevor about cruelty. He is kicking me off my son's bed. What's your ad? How? Oh, missed something there. Well, what would we do with all the horses if they didn't race? Food chain. Horse racing is natural. They carry on racing when the jockey falls off. That's conditioning. Ian, that's conditioning. They probably carry on racing to get away from them. I mean, honestly, a lot of it, I have so many problems with treating animals as entertainment. I do. What's Marie saying? I refuse to have anything to do with it this year, same as BBC. And I hear you. Who's that? Who's RKX? Jason Brechy is on his take on the Olympic opening ceremony 2012. It's amazing. Well, that was full of imagery. The 2012 one, right? That was when the government was sabotaging the NHS, and it was, remind me who designed that opening ceremony. Was it Ken, what's his face? Come on, people, remind me. But it was just so interesting. I will check out that video, by the way. Who would like to be a dancing bear here? Nobody, I bet. And animal entertainment, says Rowie. I agree with you. By the way, the absolute greed of members of parliament. We are told, and this is what they do, right? They give us the big headlines. They're telling us that the UK government will prevent members of parliament taking on lobbying jobs. Well, that's great. That's what we've been waiting for. And Lucy Powell, the new leader of the Commons, told the Guardian newspaper that the government wanted to urgently change the tone on parliamentary standards after years of poor conduct that had undermined faith in British politics. But here's the thing, you know that saying, the devil is in the detail. Well, the thing is, Ms. Powell, we shall see, because MPs should not be doing any job except the job of a member of parliament. It's a busy one that needs their full attention. But the problem is the measures, as I say, devil in the detail, they fall short of a previous Labour commitment. I know you're shocked, right? Keir Starmer in 2021, he was saying he was going to forbid MPs from taking any second jobs. Well, guess what? Not anymore. However, so the point is that what they're doing is they're making these noises. Lucy Powell said, we're going to stop lobbying jobs. Well, they should have stopped that already. That should be illegal. There shouldn't be any MPs who are allowed to do lobbying jobs, full stop. But they're going to leave MPs to do second jobs, such as media jobs, writing jobs. And I just think that's outrageous. You only have to look at GB News and how many of the former sitting government were presenters. Absolutely outrageous. And by the way, one knows some of the greediest members of parliament when they were members of parliament. Guess which one? Guess which one was the biggest earner? They like to portray him as some kind of hapless idiot. But in fact, we all know he's cunning as anything. And if he could press a button for a depopulation program, just like his old fella, he'd be there. You know who it is, Boris Johnson, right? The biggest earner, declaring 4.8 million in earnings from speeches and writing, followed by Theresa May, who earned more than 2.5 million. David Lammy, now Foreign Secretary, was the highest earning Labour MP with an income of 238,000 over 3 years from outside work. This shouldn't be allowed. This shit simply should not be allowed. It's just wrong. There are so many ways that MPs are being bribed to vote this way and that, or to lend themselves to supporting certain campaigns. Powell is literally only scratching the surface to make it seem like Labour is listening to the electorate. And yet again, all their noses will be in those troughs. We know it. Yes, we do. Yes, we do indeed. Let me just have a quick look at the Watts story. Blame the woman. I'm sure many of you know the story of Chris Watts, who annihilated his entire family, his wife, Shanann, and his two small children, Bella 4 and Celeste 3. He smothered the children. He strangled Shanann. He buried Shanann in a shallow grave near his oil storage facility where he worked. He dumped the children's bodies into the crude oil tanks. This was on August 13th, 2018 in Frederick, Colorado. And the thing is, Chris Watts appeared the absolute, the most devoted father possible. We often hear this, don't we? And he apparently snapped. He had a mistress. He was seeing Nicole Kessinger, who he'd met at work. And when his wife took the children off to North Carolina for the summer holidays, leaving him behind, that was when he really, his affair really went underway. Well, anyway, so there's new papers. Lyra was obsessed with that tragedy. I hear that. Yes, the Count of St. Germain says, I stayed away from that story. It's horrible. I don't use the word earn at Sonia. I say they made 2.5 million, or they got it. Earning is a completely different thing. Well noted, Wendy. I can't take anything away from you. Well noted. So just going back to this story. So basically, these new handwritten notes have surfaced that he was planning to write a book. Chris Watts, while he was inside, was planning to write a book with Dylan Tallman, a fellow prisoner at the Wisconsin jail that they were both at. Tallman befriended Watts. Tallman was in the cell next to Watts. The two men became close. They planned to write a book together. They began studying the Bible together. And Tallman was in prison for possession of drugs when he met Watts. Tallman has now served his sentence, but he's now serving another 4 months for driving on a suspended license, which was a probation violation. But for more than a year, Watts and Tallman had planned to write a book together. Watts then changed his mind, but Tallman has now released a series of 3 books, which is very insightful into Chris Watts. And guess what? He blames the mistress. He blames the mistress. Yeah, I started messing around behind my wife's back, and it was because of my mistress that I ended up annihilating my whole family. I hate people like that. What a loser, like a double loser. And apparently, according to Tolman, Chris Watts's take was, I was having an affair with this girl and I ended up in love with 2 women at the same time. It's what led up to what happened. She is of evil spirits like Jezebel. Sorry, you don't get to lapse into using the Bible when you have finished off your entire family and dumped them like so coldly. The thing is, the reason why I am fairly certain this man has to be a psychopath is his actions, right? Strangles his wife, possibly in front of one of the children, then loads up his wife in his truck, puts his live children in the back. The children's feet are on top of their covered mum's body. They drive off. 40-minute drive while the children are still alive. And Chris Watts takes out his children at his work site. He had all that period of time to snap out of it and say, this is a level of madness. I can't be doing this. And he didn't. Total sociopath, says the Count of St. Germain. Yeah. No, highly unlikely. I get the point about Shanann. I get the point about Shanann overspent constantly, lost all their money. They were facing bankruptcy. It's a deeper story than you hear. It absolutely is. In reality, Shanann and I would not have got on at all. She shared their entire life on Facebook. She was involved in multi-level marketing. She spent an absolute stack of money. She wanted to create an online persona of great wealth. And all of that was hard, but not any bit of that can justify what he did. Honestly, just leave the woman. Just leave her. But also, I wonder what was going on with those Thrive patches. Her multi-level marketing was to do with this whole company called Thrive. And they they were constantly being delivered sweeties from Thrive, which was like really intense supplements to my understanding, but they were also wearing these Thrive patches, and I do wonder what kind of toxic crap was pumping through their bodies as well. I mean, I have to. And Gary says, evil people hide behind the Bible. Gary, absolutely true. The moment, see, I know true Christians, like true Christians. In fact, my daughter's grandmother on her father's side is a true Christian. She walks the talk. Whereas when you hear people go, I'm a Christian, or they use it to try and encourage you to believe that they're good people, you know they're dodgy, right? You know they're dodgy. And social media is fertile ground for every wannabe Walter Mitty character. Yeah, shug, absolutely. Highly unlikely said Thrive is a patch similar to Speed. Yeah, there's something absolutely wrong with it. But I completely agree with you. The lifestyle that she was forcing him, forcing the children, looked actually very abusive towards the children. There is literally no disagreement from me here regarding Shanann Watts and her online behavior towards her husband and her two children. And still none of it can justify what he did. Not even a bit of it. And he's a disgusting coward. He's absolutely a disgusting coward. And may they all rest in peace. That anniversary is coming up shortly, of course. Let us bring in our next guests. And I've got two of them. Oh, yes, I have. I've got two for our next guest. How exciting is that? And let me find them here. Here she is. Hello, Abby.
Hello, Sonia. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, absolutely gorgeous to have you. And Mark, Abby Wynne and Mark Atwood. Lovely, Mark. How are you, Mark? We're always free. Love that sign in the back there.
Hello, Sonia. How are you?
Well, it's great to have you both with us. They are here. My dog, much dog-eared, already much thumbed. Look at the state of it already. I don't think I've had it for more than a week, and I'm already like, oh. Right. So this is Weapons of Mass Protection. Abby, you've written so many books. I mean, I like huge volume of books, right? And Mark, you've also obviously written books. One of them I never get tired of saying how it is one of my favorite visual books, and in terms of the poetry and in terms of like the protest messaging in it, absolutely love it. God Wins, absolutely love it. And this is your new book that you've written together. And honestly, I think that this is a book whose time has come. I think that is where we are at. I think we are in a place now where people who would normally have seen the whole idea of spiritual warfare as a bit woohoo, right? And I think those times are changing. So let's talk about this, right? So obviously, Mark, you are the host of the Mark Atwood Show, which you talk about in here, and you talk about how that came to be. I didn't realize it was only since 2020, but that was a calling in its own right. And Abby, of course, you're a shamanic psychotherapist. You are the co-author of this book, and you are a multiple author in your own right. And I was listening to what Richard Vobes had to say, and actually, Richard, you stole one of my lines, because he quite accurately described this book as almost like a conversation between the two of you. And I felt at times when I was reading it that I had been brought into a very kind of intimate conversation. So, Mark, I want to start with you, because one of the things that you say very early on in the book is you talk about first seeing a demon. I think you said you were the age of 3, right? Talk us through that.
Well, it was in the 3-day week back in 73 when Edward Heath was getting us in the back door of the EU via the common market, but nobody realized what he was up to, really. And
right. Compromised.
But I didn't know that. I was a little boy, and I was living in this house, and every night these creatures would come and talk to me, and it was like I was having a conversation, and it went on for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they were basically, and look, it's a memory that I blocked for quite a long time, but when it came back, it was like, what were they talking about? And they were basically trying to recruit me. And there was one particular night where they were saying, they were buttering me up, and looking back, obviously I didn't understand this as a child, but looking back on it, it makes sense to me because of all my life experiences and all the people I've met. that the dark forces, for want of a better term, know who you are before you get here, and they also know what you're going to do, and they try to nullify you in some way, or try to recruit you, or try to knock you off your path, and ultimately try to get you to take your own life. And this was happening to me as soon as I got here. I mean, in my life, you know, there was an abortion attempt on me when I was in my mother's womb as well. So
Wow.
and look at and all the healings that I've done with so many people over the years, under hypnosis and using things like the body code and shamanic healing, and I've done everything. Ayahuasca, peyote, all of these ceremonies have all pointed to the same thing for me personally. And you know, this was a very personal journey until I started the podcast. And then I just got, it's like Richard, the interview I did with Richard, he said that at the end that he feels compelled to keep producing stuff and to keep asking these questions.
Right.
And that's exactly how I feel.
Yes.
It's a compulsion, because we're up against tyranny. Not in the 3D, it's tyranny, but in the multidimensional sense, it's good versus evil.
It is good versus evil. And it really is that simple, isn't it? We are dealing with multiple dark forces around us, especially when our aim is to do good. And by the way, I tend to, for me, I talk about how what I do is more of a calling than a
Yeah.
career, but it's
Well, you are.
exactly that same thing, isn't it, that you're
Yeah,
talking about?
and you can see I was listening to you before I came on, and every time I hear you speak, I'm like, go on, Sonia, because you're just giving it all the time. As George Galloway said to Saddam Hussein, the indefatigability of it is amazing. And you know, you're a proper journalist, and
Thank
you
you.
always speak from the heart,
I
and
do.
you never give up. And
No,
congratulations on the court stuff recently, by the way.
thank you. Thank you. All appreciated, obviously ongoing, and it's not something I can talk about, but lots of things to keep moving forward on
You
that.
will
So
win.
thank you. Well, you know, we have the trial later, but again, I can't talk about that. So
No.
let me refer to Abby. Abby, so we're in no doubt that demons are real, right? So who are the good boys? Who are the good guys? Who are the good boys?
Well, it's a mixed bag, really. I think we're the good guys, first of all, and we have to be good with ourselves in order to know what to say no, to know what is appropriate, to have good, strong boundaries. Because there's plenty of stories, and this is what I love about Mark. We go into the dark corners in this
Right,
book. We don't hold
right,
anything back. And there's a whole piece in the book about the New Age and about angels and false prophets and how people think they're talking to amazing beings of light, but they're not. You know, Mark has introduced this phrase to me, which I've been using a lot recently, which is called a limited hangout, where most of what you're getting in this area or this field is true, but there's a little bit that's not true. But the little bit that isn't true is the bit that gets you in the stomach. And so who are the good guys? You have to start with you. You really, really do.
ooh,
And just say, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. I'm going to sort this out. I don't want this. And once that happened, it's like something turns, something changes, and it has a ripple effect all around you. And they can come and get you twice as hard just to talk you out of it. You can be really tested at that point. But I think the time has come. I mean, I was looking for my angels yesterday because I realized, you know, I've worked in this field for years. I wrote this book with Mark, and I realized last night, oh my gosh, I'm actually being attacked all week, and I didn't even know.
Hmm.
Because they get you in your weak spots. Now, the way I was being attacked this week was this slow, you know, the frog in the cooker slowly
yes,
raising the heat
yes.
very slowly, so slowly that I didn't even realize it until I was just so agitated and so angry and wanting to punch something. And I said, hang on, this isn't me. So I started with an energy clearing, and I cleared everything, and then suddenly something lifted. So you have to be aware. So even, you know, Mark's mentioning court. If you go into court bright and shiny and big and strong and powerful in who you are, then that's the good guys. You know, that's the light that you bring into everything. And that's what I want to teach people how to do. That's my passion. That's what I
Right,
never get
right.
tired of doing.
And it's interesting because Mark is talking about how I basically show up as me, no holds barred. But Mark, do you apply that to yourself? Because I think you're incredibly courageous. You are prepared to say things, even if people think you're absolutely crazy. And that in its own right is hugely courageous. What does it take to do that for you?
Not having a fear of death. really. I mean, I've nearly died multiple times in my life in various bizarre circumstances. But when COVID hit, I was very much, I've been researching like you have for years and years and years. My wake up started when Prince Philip shook my hand at St. James's Palace and failed to recognize my uniform. And he was the boss of the RAF. And I couldn't understand this.
Wow.
That was in 1988, I think. 1980.
Oh, a real world wake-up call. Very interesting. So just go back there because that's very interesting. What did that say to you?
Well, I was the I used to be in the Air Cadets as a teenager in Northampton. I used to rush home on a Thursday night after parade to watch Question Time because I was deeply interested in politics.
Wow.
And I'd get there and everybody else would be in bed and I'd sit and watch, earnestly watching Robin Day talking to a load of other paedophiles. And I'd be, I didn't know that then. And I'd be like, at the end of it, thank you for watching the BBC. And then they play God Save the Queen. And I was so brainwashed and patriotic. I still am patriotic, but not in this way. I would stand to attention and salute the TV when there was nobody else in the room.
Oh, bless you.
So I was a very, very keen.
Wow, you've had a huge change then to come from that sort of background. That's massive. That's seismic. That's like you're a different person.
Well, yeah. And then, my own personal circumstances were that my father had a brain hemorrhage at the age of 37. And at the age of 17, I was asked if they could turn the life support machine off because my mother was out of it and they couldn't get any sense out of her. And I don't think it's even legal now. And I spent...
He's frozen. And I think he's frozen on us, Abby. It'll come back shortly. What I also...
I'd already been in the Air Force for a bit then, and I already knew that there were issues around the whole military service thing. Even though I've got nothing against anybody that serves in the military, they're all great people, but most of them have been dupes. And I just felt like, well, who am I actually working for? That's what I felt at the time.
This is amazing. Like your awareness from a very young age is quite extraordinary, I think. And I think that it's really profound you saying there was like an abortion attempt on you when you were still in the womb, because it's almost miraculous that people are born. The amount of things that can stop people being born in the first place, then that alone should tell us that we are miracles. But here's one of the things that I like about it. I actually think what sets this apart is this is almost a how to reach places that you might not have been able to before. You go about it in a very methodical and forensic way. The breakdown of the chapters, for example, as I say, it starts off with like, our demons real? Then you talk about the good guys. You go through, you talk about ascension, about knowing when you are being attacked and identifying your own weaknesses. This is a guide. But there was one, I mean, there's many, but this one, I just wanted to, this is just at the start, right at the start on page 8. No, let me find last. I can't find it. But it was one line that I thought was really profound. I mean, there's many lines that I think are profound, but this one I think sums up the whole book in many respects, because the whole book is about empowerment, right, Abby? It's about not only protecting yourself from spiritual attacks, but it's about empowering you as an individual, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very important.
So that line I'm talking about is when you know yourself, people can't control you.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Well, I'm thinking about me because Mark talks a lot about his childhood, and you're talking about the big switch from his pure belief, 100% in what he was told was real, coming back into himself. And I was reminded of me, who I was kind of an outcast living in Ireland. I'm Jewish. My family was Orthodox. So we were never in any sect or cult. And I was always on the outskirts, always on the outside, kind of looking and asking, well, who am I? And where do I fit in? And even when I'm with my family and they're telling me, oh, you have to do this and this and this with the religion, I'm going, no, well, that doesn't feel right to me. I'm not going to do it. And what was really interesting was my family moved away from Orthodoxy to just show up at the services when you're supposed to show up at the services. And I'm like, okay, we're an outcast for this, but we're not even embracing this. So what do we embrace? So I started to get in touch with my inner self, my inner connection with, well, what does this feel like?
Right.
What does this seem like to me? And for, and an advantage, I suppose, was that I was never beaten down when the magic showed up as a child. So I remember myself sitting in a car regularly behind people waiting at the traffic lights to go and all the indicators flashing to turn left or to turn right, as I'm sure everybody's been in this situation. But as a child, I was going, gosh, they're really annoying because they're all indicating at a different, what if I could just, by the power of my will, make all the indicators go at the same time, like metronomes
Ooh,
all
ooh,
synchronizing together.
ooh.
And I tried it once and it worked. And I'm like, no, that didn't really happen. That didn't. I started realizing that we have huge power of will. And so I used to just do it and not put a huge force behind it. And it would start to do that as well. And it made me really interested in the nature of things and the nature of our reality and who we are and what we are. And I think as a collective, we're all there right now at, trying to figure out, well, hang on, are we what we think we are? Are we who we thought we were? And what is
Right,
history? And what is this realm
right.
that we're living in? And, talking again about the good guys and the bad guys and the demons and the angels, I'm even questioning now after all this time, well, were they here the whole time? Is it, multidimensional fabric that we're just being able to pierce through? There's another line that we use in the book and a line that Mark and I use quite regularly, which is, when people say the veils are thinning, the veils are thinning.
Yes.
We've been saying, well, the veil is inside you.
Stop. That's freaky. That's so freaky. That I mean, hairs stand on end moment, because that is quite weird. And so the thing is I think there's a lot of truth in that. I come from a very spiritual background. My mum was a medium. I didn't grow up in a conventional way, but for the most part, our society is absolutely dumbed down just to the basic physicality of everything, which is why so many people have constant plastic surgery, because they want their outward appearance to be looking a certain way, but they're not taking account of their spirituality. Now, Mark, and I know you'll be able to expand on this. Has there been an absolute deliberate movement to separate us from source?
No, 100%. 100%. I mean, you've only got to look at the fluoride in the water. That's the simplest, most obvious place, right? This lie about fluoride being good for your teeth is just a massive lie. And fluoride is a neurotoxin, but it also calcifies your pineal gland. Your pineal gland, the second episode I did in my podcast was about this being a war on the pineal gland, because it's a war on consciousness, and consciousness massively depends upon you having a fully functioning pineal gland, which is really your connection to God. That's where all the DMT is secreted, and that's where you have visions, and that's where you become psychic, which is why I interviewed a guy that took adrenochrome the other week, and he said when he took it, he could see the future. So, this stuff is, and that's made of blood from the pineal gland. So, yeah, 100% they're trying to separate us from source, because the whole thing, we're frequency, right? So every single thing, from the toxins in the carpets and the rubber on your shoes that's disconnecting you from the earth, the fact that Bill Gates wants to block out the sun, all of just everything about our food, our water, everything is poisoned. Not And on a 3D level, it just sounds like, oh, they're just trying to poison us. But no, it's more than that. It's disrupting our frequency, because once the frequency is disrupted,
Right.
you have full control. And
Right.
this is an open air prison, and we have this illusion of freedom. But they don't need to put us behind bars, because we put ourselves behind our own bars.
Taken care of already, isn't it? It's all,
Yeah.
I mean, we're literally doing it to ourselves. But as I say, this to me is a sort of go-to book, which will actually guide you to reaching that state of oneness, really. And I think what's important is you look at the whole, because you're also not just looking at what perhaps is being done to us, but you're also looking at what we're doing to ourselves. What are we putting on our bodies? What are we spending our time, our energy with? Abby, why is it so vitally important that we are much more careful about what we're doing to ourselves? Because we're so lax, aren't we, for the most part?
Well, I think with the bombardment that we are receiving of all of the information and all of the distractions, we don't really pay attention to detail anymore. And it's the devil's in the details, isn't that a saying? So I've stopped using chemical shampoo. I hardly need to use any soap. I stood in the supermarket there and looked and saw everything has chemicals in it. Every single thing you do has a consequence. Every single thing you choose has a consequence. I mean, when you and Mark there talking about where frequency coming in to disrupt us, even the music that we listen to, the lyrics is all shifted to the frequency that hurts
Right.
us. You know, kitchen appliances like your fridge are humming away in the background all the time at the low level of frequency that damages, and people are beginning to realize this and change what you're listening to, and something lifts. You know, go outside and something lifts. That's why it feels better outside. And so it's amazing, even what you know, how you wake up, what you have around your bed. In my book How to Be Well, which I wrote in 2014, published by Hay House, you know, even talking about what do you see, what's the first thing you see in the morning when you wake up, and do you have these sentimental, heavy photographs of people that, you know, that you're missing, that are gone, or are you having a big expanse of beauty when you wake up? Are you offering yourself beauty? Are you allowing yourself to receive beauty? You know, beauty is huge, and we're told, oh, we don't deserve beauty. You know, I wrote a line for one of my diaries. I write a diary every year as well. So yeah. And one of the lines was, you know, I opened the door and I found all these roses sitting there at the door, but because I hadn't opened the door, they're all rotting. And then I realized that I was the one who was giving them to myself, and I wasn't receiving them.
Wow. What a profound realization. Some people are talking about distilled water in the comments. What's the importance of distilled water, Mark?
Water is key to all of this. I mean, in my house, I have a whole house filter. That then goes through a thing called a grander device, which brings it to life. And in my tap, I have another filter which uses reverse osmosis and then adds hydrogen to it. So I tell my kids, look, don't buy those drinks in the shop. I have the best water in the world. And when I get that water, I then put it into a vortex machine just to give it extra life, and then always drink it with salt. Because when you drink water without minerals in, you are dehydrated. When you drink bottled water from the shop, you are drinking dead water, even if it's clean. And when you're drinking water out of the tap, you're screwed. And even worse than that, people, you know, we opened a healing center a year ago in the west of Ireland, and the people that come in, it's unbelievable the levels of toxicity inside people. That's the thing that's killing them.
Wow.
And it starts with the water. That's the first thing we talk to them about.
Absolutely
when
vital.
they come in. Yeah, and people don't know what alive water is, and it's so important.
Yes.
So we have distilled water. You bring it to life, but it's still dead. Well, it's alive, but it's not got any minerals in. So you must never drink water without electrolytes. And, you know, you can do that cheaply with Celtic sea salt, or you can go and get something like 40,000 volts, which is brilliant electrolyte to add to stuff. And that charges your cells, because all of our illness and and I believe this is all part of the demonic attacks as well. I worked, like, you know, I'm claircognizant, and I got this message a few years ago that every cell inside it has detritus of some kind coming from wherever, deliberately most of the time.
Wow.
That's the stuff that they can latch onto. Once you start taking that stuff out, because all dis-ease is caused by, you're not sick, you're toxic, and that's all caused by toxicity.
Right.
And it starts with the water. But even yesterday, a guy came in, very awake, lovely fella, came 100 miles to come to this place. We had a coffee with him. And I said, what are you drinking? And he said, oh, I'm doing well with the water, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, but what are you bathing in? He went, what do you mean? I said, well, you know, what do you have a shower in? I said, that's tap water. Your skin is your biggest organ. You can't just drink clean water and then go and sit in a bath full of fluoride and chlorine and all the other crap they put into it.
It's so hard, though.
I know it is,
but this is so difficult, even for somebody like me who's fairly clued up. It's so difficult to make those kind of leaps to those extremes. But I hear you. It's important to at least know, because then you can start to make some steps towards it as well. Choose Love says, I'm enjoying this conversation. Well, good to hear it.
Well, you know, people say to me it's so expensive to get the filters, but then they go to the shop and they buy £3-4 bottles of mineral water.
I hear you.
Just add it up.
I hear you. I hear you. And that's the thing, is that, and again, that's why I think this is important, because there's actually a lot of practicality about this. This isn't just woo woo. And I come from a background where we never say woo woo about spiritual issues, but I know that a lot of people do. A lot of people are like, oh, it's like chocolate. It just kind of melts on your tongue and that's it, over and done with. But actually, no, spirituality is all encompassing. It is with you from, you know, throughout your entire life. And that's why I feel no great fear about any anything because I'm absolutely aware of a much higher order going on. And I feel very much in tune with my source and what I'm here for. And it could end at any moment. But so what? I've done everything I humanly could up to this point. And I just wonder, Mark and Abby, whether you both feel, you know, kind of accomplished. There must have been a sense of relief getting this out, Abby. There must have been, because there will be, well, because of all the stuff that it contains. And it's, I mean, this is coming from light. So that there must have been a release for you to have it out.
Well, actually, no.
Oh,
Because I felt there's more to do, and that people who read the book could be filled with a sense of overwhelm. There's too much. Where do I start? What do I do? How do I change? You know, it's like, here's all of these things, and people who might never have thought of this before. It's really difficult. So I hopped off there to pick this up. So I made this, which
wow.
is, you can see it's a proof. So it will be available in print format, I'd say in a couple of days' time on Amazon. I made a workbook. And the workbook is the work of the book, but it's also got lots of things, questions,
Brilliant
ideas.
idea.
And
Such a great idea.
I've put in QR codes because I've been doing this work for 14 years, and I've got lots of free healings, meditations on SoundCloud, and I just want people to go out there and be empowered. Take your power back is where you have to start, because if you're not powerful and then you're overwhelmed, you leak out all of your energy. So if you start by taking your power back, then you can decide, well, what's the most important thing for me to do? And like Mark says, water is important. And I've discovered through drinking water that's structured and healthy, it actually tastes amazing. And then you lose your cravings for all the other fancy drinks that you thought you needed, because the water is filling and satisfying your body and all the things that you need, you know. So that was important for me, but for someone else, it could be something else, like stopping having fights with their parents. That could be much more important than changing their water. And so by taking your power back and getting a few tips and pointers from me, and doing cord cutting, which is also in the book. My daughter made some of these illustrations to show people what cords might look like, because again, we don't necessarily know.
Oh,
So by cutting these cords, you free yourself up and your power comes back, and you can then see what's going on, and then you become aware of what you're choosing, and you can say, okay, I'm choosing not to live like this anymore. And then you get your inner knowing and yourself, and taking it very slowly, one step at a time. So for me, it feels like, okay, this is the book that leads on to all the other books I've written, that, you know, so I'm stepping up now to say, right, people who want to do the work, I'm here. So it's not necessarily a release, but it's like the greyhounds in the box waiting for the thing to come up for the race to start. It feels like the lid is off and we're running now, and here we are, and let's go and let's do this thing. Let's get our power back. Let's be stronger, and let's do it all, because everyone's an individual. So it is going to be different for everybody.
yes.
It's really important.
Yes. Mark, finish us off. Take us into something that if somebody was listening to this for the first time, because obviously towards the end of the book, you actually talk about daily workout, right? The importance of a daily workout in terms of your spiritual fitness. Tell us some simple things that people could do today if this is a new arena for them.
Well, you know, over my time, I've met people, the teachers appear when the student's ready. And I talk about one particular guy that came into my life 15 years ago called Jim. And Jim came to me on the phone, and he asked me to visualize something, which involves standing in the window of a stately home, overlooking the big circle where the cars come in. And he asked me to imagine post office vans coming in, picking up gold, and then going off. And when I was on the phone, and I'd never met him, while I was on the phone, I was visualizing this, but I had thousands of post office vans coming in and then speeding off stuff with gold. And he said on the phone, "Mark, slow down." And I was like, how does he know that I've got these coming in so quick? And so I ended up meeting him, and he started teaching me loads of protection techniques. And through that time, just to quickly answer your question, my personal routine is most days, sometimes I forget if I'm busy, but and then you don't have such a good day if you do forget. I say 7 thank yous. I think of 7 things that I'm really grateful for, people usually, and I say those out loud. I call upon the highest version of Archangel Michael and my spirit guides, all of which I can feel, and I connect with them, and I ask them for protection, the full armor of God. And then I ask God to give me the guidance to be the best I can possibly be today. Doesn't always work, but I ask for it. And practically, I make sure I drink some structured water with a bit of lemon juice and salt, and put my bare feet on the grass. That's a phenomenal way to start your day, and it's simple, and
Fabulous.
most of it's free.
Love it.
Oh, and
Absolutely
also,
love
I
it.
was just going to say, we wanted to make sure that this was available for everybody. So there is a way of getting it for free. The ebook is free on a web link that I can give you.
Yes,
Where people,
please.
it's bit.ly /
Can you send it to me and I'll put it in the description where we have
I
a
thought,
description?
yes, I'll do that. Well,
That would be
actually, yes.
fantastic.
Great.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'll do that afterwards.
Appreciate you both very much. Everybody, you just hear that. You can get a free copy of this book, and that really is, quite incredible. Thank you both so much for joining us this morning, everybody. Mark Atwood, Abby Wynne, and their wonderful book, Weapons of Mass Protection. I even love the fact that you've taken what has been such a negative expression and you've turned it into something positive. That I love. Take good care of yourself, both of you. Thank you both for joining us this morning.
Sonia.
Absolutely lovely to have them. And thank you, Celine, for organising both Abby and Mark to join us this morning. Very much appreciated. And I just want to refer very briefly to something that Mark said. Mark talked about my court situation. You can see clearly I don't want to talk about it. I can't talk about it because it's an ongoing legal situation. I have done an update on my Fighting Fun page. I'm not quite sure what Mark was talking about in relation to a win, but there is a breakdown of what has just happened in terms of meaning. The most recent court hearing was to do with meaning, and I've done a breakdown of it, including all the judges' comments. I've run the entire judgment so you can see it and what it actually potentially means for people who make crime podcasts and online issues. So I will put that in the description. You can check it out. And please, nobody in comments make a comment at all about my legal situation, because I do not support that and I have to be incredibly careful. As you could tell when I was talking to Mark. So just wanted to clear that up, and you can get the full write-up on my Fighting Fun page. Right. Horrible story that came my way. By the way, did you enjoy that? Did you just enjoy that with Abby and Mark? Wasn't it lovely? A little bit of spiritual stuff. 80% Scottish says, I use a distiller for my drinking water, and the nasty crap left in the machine after a cycle, it becomes rock hard if left too long and stinks of chemicals. Unity and love are the kryptonite of the elite, says Shug. Lyra is talking to Rowie. Oh, I can confirm, without even knowing Rowie, Lyra, I can confirm that he does seem like the person who draws his own lines and marches to the beat of his own drum. I think Rowie is a male. Wait, have I got that right? Rupert, I'm going to talk about Richard D. Hall's case right now. Much love to you too, Jan. Much love to you too. Let's talk about, yes, Plantopius. We will put the link in the description. Thank you, Short Order Cook. Excellent guess. I appreciate that very much. So, all right, well, let's talk about Richard D. Hall next then. Let me find my notes. I've been very fortunate to be receiving regular updates this week from a very wonderful lady called Sue. Sue is magnificent. I love Sue. Sue M. I'm going to call her here. And she's somebody who's supported my own legal issues, and she's now supporting Richard as well, which is absolutely wonderful. Let me find my Richard notes, because I don't really want to forget what I wanted to be able to say. But he had a 4-day hearing this week. It ended yesterday around lunchtime. And obviously, so as I say, my good friend Sue has been in attendance every day. She's given me updates each day. While national media has focused on the demonisation of Mr. Hall, the first-hand accounts I have heard from court have been quite different. Oh, yes, they have. So some background for those who don't know: independent filmmaker and researcher Richard D. Hall being sued by 2 people said to be victims of the Manchester Arena explosion at an Ariana Grande concert in May 2017. Mr. Hall denies the official narrative and says there was not a bomb, and many of the people who claim to be victims were in fact crises actors. Survivors Martin and Eve Hibbert are suing him for harassment and data protection at the High Court in London. Mr. Hibbert was said to have been left with spinal cord injury while his daughter Eve suffered severe brain damage after they were injured. Richard is being sued over several videos and a book in which he claimed that it was a hoax, as well as, we're told, secret filming that took place. Witness testimony in court was primarily from Mr. Hibbert himself, his partner, and from a friend of his, and a woman called Sarah, who is a carer for Eve. After yesterday, researcher and writer Ian Davis and Richard gave a live report to Gemma O'Doherty. Unfortunately, it was such a poor connection that my sodden hearing could hardly pick up what was being said, but I got plenty from Sue anyway. But as I say, Richard Hall has claimed that the attacks in which Salman Abedi detonated a homemade rucksack bomb in the crowd of concert goers was faked by government agencies, as I say, using crisis actors. He did attempt to appeal against the action, but that was previously dismissed. Mr. Hall and Mr. Hibbert both appeared in the court, Richard gave his own testimony, and by all accounts, it was very good. And actually, the reality is something that I'd already said to Sue, and it turns out that Richard's barrister also said it in court, and that the consequence of this hearing and what has taken place is a Streisand effect. And the Streisand effect is where you seek to silence something and you end up amplifying even more and making it even bigger. And I know about that in my own personal life. And that is exactly what's happened with Rich in this situation. So you have headlines where somebody that they've deemed to be Britain's sickest man, that's some of the headlines where he's saying that was a fake, it was a hoax, it was staged. So all of that is very interesting. And Paul Oakley is representing Richard Hall and said that Richard was perfectly entitled to hold his views and he's willing to amend them if he is made aware of evidence to the contrary. Well, of course, if you remember, I've been talking about this, how Richard wasn't even allowed to present his own evidence. And in written submissions, Mr. Oakley said Hall and his beliefs have a right to freedom of expression. His client's published views, however unpleasant to some people, were protected. His representative said, and Mr. Hibbert had made a positive choice to cooperate with the media concerning the attack, the barrister later said. And of course, remember, all of this really came about after the BBC decided to target Rich D. Hall and Mariana Spring, misinformation of the BBC. Barely enough experience to make her own coffee in the morning, suddenly hoisted to great heights within the BBC. And she was one of the people who targeted Richard, went to his stall, created untold problems for him, and then resulted in this court hearing. Anyway, I'm getting a sense that this may not go as many people thought it might go. It is actually looking increasingly positive for Richard. By all accounts, Paul Oakley was brilliant, as opposed to counsel for the claimants. There was a lot of criticism about his arguments, but we shall see. Ultimately, we shall see. Judgment is to follow. And as I say, may not go the way we think. The way people think is that they're going to throw the book at Richard D. Hall, but they might not. Who can ever tell? It's a strange old world. And the thing is, there's a lot of difference in the High Court between cases like a kind of Julian Assange, which is clearly political, and a case like this, which is on the facts, which is on evidence. And I'm not talking, Richard is not going to be able to prove his theory in court. That's not what he's going to be able to do, but he may be able to prove that he has not harassed the Hibberts and that using their data was not breaking GDPR. He may be able to prove that. Because GDPR is still a relatively new area of law and it is changing on a constant basis. Right, moving on from that. Just to say, I used to love going to cinema. And the reason I talk about that is I noticed that Cineworld is set to close. About 25 UK cinemas axed hundreds of jobs under a new plan. And as I say, I used to love cinema. I went Saturday morning cinema as a child with my sister. I absolutely loved it. I also remember my mum taking me out of school, claiming I was going for a dentist or doctor's appointment and taking me to see like bed knobs and broomsticks. I remember that. I also took my daughter to cinema regularly when she was a child. But it's kind of since then, I haven't been to cinema so much. And one of the reasons is down to how obscenely expensive it really is. It's absolutely grotesque and obscene. No wonder they're closing. I remember complaining when I was charged nearly £6 for a regular fill of pick and mix sweets. And that was about 8 years ago. I thought that was actually shocking. It doesn't surprise me at all that they're going to be having to close all of these cinemas. And frankly, they've literally outpriced themselves from the market. They've assisted in putting another nail in the coffin of human beings socializing and meeting outside the home. Many people now would prefer to switch on a streaming service and hire their film rental from that. Adult tickets for cinema are now approximately, depending on where you are, but approximately £20.19. Large popcorn can be anything from £5.65 to £7.80. Think about that. A hot dog is around £6, right? A large soft drink is nearly a £5. This is obscene money. This is absolutely obscene money. And honestly, people are sick and tired of being overcharged. I am more than happy to go out, socialize and enjoy myself, but I hate extortion, and cinemas are now about extortion, and it's absolutely horrendous. And eat the mushes, chew it up, gulp it down, drink your beer or whatever. What the heck is mushes? We always take our own sweets to the cinema, says Christine. If the truth you tell, the more they try to ridicule and silence you. Absolutely. Saturday morning pictures, Merv, every week in the 50s cost 6D. He was there every week. Beyond Belief said, nothing worth watching at the cinema anyway, unless you like woke BS. I mean, there are sometimes good ones, right? Hello, Space Cat. Space Cat. It's a bit late today, but better late than never. Good morning, Captain Flint. I think so, HK Very. Sounds like a deliberate deterrent to keep people at home to watch TV. Choose lev, reduce socializing, probably. All those things I agree with. I don't agree that we should be reducing socializing. I agree that is probably what's behind it. So this one of the things I want to talk about is hello, Pete. Pete sent me some pictures because for our geoengineering spot. And you know why we talk about it? Because mainstream media won't. Pete said, I'm just a person who watches your videos and documentaries, which are wonderful. Thank you, Pete. You are too wonderful. I understand that you are compiling a collection of images which are suggestive of weather modification. Here are some images that I captured from our garden in Sheffield on 23rd of June. Within half an hour, these show a sky crisscrossed with trails. Were taken looking south. Those with an aircraft flying without any contrails at all were facing west. Unless there was a significant effect due to different altitudes, it appears that the trails in the south could not have been a simple result of condensation. Not conclusive, and the sky to the west remained okay for a while before cloud came over and spoiled my afternoon. We are having rotten weather. Let's be real about this. Pete, I looked at your pictures. Mate, by every understanding, every metric I have of what is geoengineering, your sky was geoengineered that day. Absolutely it was. No doubt about it. Cashless society alert. Have you seen that there are no plans to produce any more 2s and 1p's? You know what that means, don't you? They're getting rid of them. They're scrapping them. And the mealy-mouthed media say things like pennies are at risk of being scrapped. But the fact is, the Treasury has absolutely no plans to produce any more copper coins. Certainly in the coming years, they've made that clear. And Royal Mint has not been asked to produce any coins of this kind. And you know why? Because they want to take us into a cashless society, and it's cash. We must always remember, if we have one day of the week, make it Cash Friday, go to a cash point machine or wherever, withdraw money, try and pay as much as you can in cash. I have cash right by the side. I keep cash by me on a constant basis these days. It's weird. Isn't that weird? But the thing is, there is a lot of discrimination involved in a cashless society. Think about it. And also when they scrap things like this, because one of the marketing ploys, for example, is that often items are like under the £1 or under the $1, like 99p. When they do things like that, what they're going to do is they'll end up rounding it upwards, won't they? So that's one thing. And also a lot of people, I mean, not everybody has debit cards or credit cards or any of those kind of things. And some people have to function with cash. Some people don't have a bank account, and nobody should be forced into having one either. And I think there is a real concern And also the Federation of Small Businesses is warning that card providers could charge higher prices if consumers have less choice over how they pay. And some of these businesses have only themselves to blame when they have become an entirely cashless business, and it's just completely wrong. And I think I mentioned this the other week, that if you've already experienced the service and they tell you it's cashless, they have to take your cash. So for example, if you've had your hair done and then you go to pay and they say, well, we only take cards, they have to take the recognized tender of money. They have to, because the service has already taken place, the business has already taken place. They have to take it. And of course that doesn't happen in shops, because we take the item to them, and if they say it's a cashless, it's a cashless till or whatever, then they just can deny us buying and purchasing the item in the first place. But I think this is absolutely the first sign of us heading into that CBDC world and the cashless society. I am in no doubt about it whatsoever. So please, if you are able today, please take out some cash. Please definitely do that. I wanted to talk about this story that concerns me. Who is familiar with K-pop? K-pop. K-pop is Korean pop. It's massive, absolutely huge and massive, primarily in Korea and other parts of the world, not so much in the UK, although it, still has plenty of followers. And but what I'd noticed was how many K-pop stars had passed away. So I decided to do a deep dive into the whole phenomenon of K-pop, and I realized it's actually associated with South Korean government. As somebody said to me, K-pop artists are the original shills. And so let me talk you through this. I noticed this pattern of these Korean pop stars. They're dying in disproportionate numbers. And I mentioned it to my daughter. She said, yeah, it is a thing. And she said, it's because these bands are treated like military. And what has happened is that, so these deaths, huge amount of them, I think the most recent one was April 2024, K-pop star Park Bo Ram found dead at a friend's house, aged just 30. And some of these people are dying under mysterious circumstances, and some of them are taking their own lives. A whole plethora, Cavan, of lives have been lost by K-pop artists, including Park Soo-rian, Moonbin, BJ Aeyong, Choi Sung-bong. Now, these names may mean nothing to you, but trust me, these are huge artists in the arena of K-pop. And we are talking, K-pop is huge selling. This is not small business at all. They use styles from all around the world, particularly black music, such as hip hop, R&B, jazz, gospel, reggae. They also draw on electronic dance and disco. They mesh it with their own musical culture of South Korea. It became popular around the 2000s, especially in the international context. They've benefited massively from social media, specifically like TikTok as one example. In 2018, that was when K-pop really experienced such massive, significant growth and became what was known as a power player, marking a 17.9% increase in revenue growth worldwide. As of 2019, Korean K-pop was ranked at number 6 among the top 10 music markets worldwide. This is not small stuff. The two biggest K-pop bands are BTS, the boy band, and Blackpink, the girl band. These two acts are cited as artists leading the market growth. And 2020 alone, again, K-pop experienced exponential growth, record-breaking year, and it's gone on ever since. And one of the things that they're most kind of noticeable for is using the use of English phrases. So as one example, BTS did a song called Butter, huge song, massive. And part of the lyric is, smooth like butter, criminal undercover, real kind of English phrases that they have used. They've been accused, as you can imagine, of cultural appropriation. And in many respects, I can absolutely see why these K-pop artists have indulged in blackface, typical black styles like cornrows, for one example. A lot of the language that they use is based on Black American street slang. But here's where it gets creepy. So these kids they're treated like a military. It is extremely hard on them, what they're put through. But this can also rescue a lot of kids from poverty. But it is, when I say it's like military, I mean it in every sense of the word. The synchronicity of these bands, you have to watch it to believe it. It's like they are so incredibly sharp, and it's precision synchronicity. Dancing is a huge part of the K-pop business. So but as well as all these weird deaths in weird circumstances, including the taking of life, they are put through this incredibly physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically demanding program. And this is how harsh it all is. I watch videos where K-pop artists are fainting on stage because they're also, for the most part, unbelievably thin. Their food is restricted, what they eat, their sleep is restricted, the way they present themselves, they're all restricted. And that is because they're linked to the government, which I'm going to come to in a minute. But I watched this series of videos where K-pop artists are literally fainting on stage, and the other artists on the stage carry on dancing around them. I saw a dancer collapse on stage, her body twitching. It took a whole 30 seconds. I timed it while the singers and dancers they were dancing around her as she's on stage twitching. And for people, like the security finally came on like 30 seconds later and took her off. But that is not an isolated incident. These kids are dropping down on stage, or they are being driven to take their own lives, and you have to wonder why. So I did, as I say, I did a deep dive, and I looked into it. And actually, in the initial days, critics were saying these have to be government agendas because these people are very conformist. What is it all about? And there is a substance to this, and government have actually admitted the benefits of this phenomenally successful domestic music and what is being imported. The Bank of Korea has actually attributed the rapid surge in cultural exports of South Korea to K-pop. That includes food, goods, clothes, makeup. And the thing is that K-pop has become known as soft power in terms of policies and government. K-pop artists are promoted by government embassies and consulates who have also organized K-pop concerts outside of the country. South Korean have government initiatives to expand the popularity of K-pop, which is undertaken by the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism. They are responsible for the worldwide establishment of Korean cultural centers, of which K-pop is a leading part of it. And so this soft power that I'm talking about, kind of in an era of mass communication, soft power, which is described as the pursuing of one's goals by persuading stakeholders using cultural and ideological power. So these kids behave in a certain way, they present in a certain way, it's formulaic, it's unoriginal, it's painting by numbers pop, even more than regular pop music. But what they do is they convey government messages to the masses. That is what they do. These are not regular pop bands. These are literally pop shills in every sense of the word. But what concerns me is how many of them are dying. And I wanted to raise it up. I wanted to bring it to your attention, because what pressures are these children facing? And a lot of them are children. Some of them are like 15, 16. So it really is very concerning. The strain on them, physical, as I say, physical, dance, synchronicity with military precision, mental, the stamina, the separation from their parents. Some of these artists, as I say, are very, very young. And the industry has also been criticized for the sexualization of minors as well. Again, very much kind of like a globalist agenda. And it goes on. And there's also incredible pressure for these young Korean artists to obtain extensive cosmetic surgery to such a degree that some of the artists have even had themselves filmed going through these procedures. They are, without a shadow of a doubt, narrowing beauty standards. They're almost all nearly identical. This is the height of conformity. This is almost the antithesis of what, of any kind of form of rebellion music. And but globally, absolutely huge. And I'll give you one example. There are basically 3 agencies in South Korea that is responsible for the vast majority of K-pop. They are SM Entertainment, YG Entertainment, and JYP Entertainment. They have now formed their own mini globalism. They're all coming together. They're all part of the same whole. That's what they're doing. They join together just like globalist structures to dominate. And just to give you an example, in 2008, SM Entertainment made a total revenue of $42.5 million, right? $42.5 million. By the time we get to 2020, we're talking 521 million US dollars. Big diff, massive difference to go from 42 million to 521 million. And we haven't even got figures coming up to 2024 yet, but we will soon. And you can see how this is a government operation. K-pop artists are, without a shadow of a doubt, shills, and their lives are not the glossy appearance they appear to be. No wonder they are dying in disproportionate numbers. On that very sad note, on this day in history, 27th of July, 1694, the Bank of England was founded. It was primarily founded to fund the war effort against France. Well, that was what we were told anyway. The King and Queen of the time, William and Mary, were 2 of the original stakeholders and stockholders of it. The original Royal Charter of 1694, granted by King William and Queen Mary, explained that the bank was founded to promote the public good and benefit of our people. Yeah, right. Well, as we all know, that has not happened. And now the same money changers are preparing for the next monetary system to arrive, as Jim Ferguson referred to earlier. And I was watching a very interesting video with Whitney Webb. I'm sure many of you know Whitney. She's a great researcher. I've interviewed her before about Epstein, and she was talking about BlackRock, Larry Fink, the head of BlackRock. And obviously BlackRock is the biggest asset and money management company in the world. But what they were talking about was the whole idea is about harnessing nature's economy, the natural assets corporation model. And this will enable the ushering in of a new financial monetary system. And they were talking about how Bitcoin is the gateway for elites to move us into the next debt-based economy, and all part of the surveillance system. And everything we heard from Jim and that new bill, it all plays into this. I urge you to find that interview. It was a very, very good one. Whitney is great. And I very much enjoy listening to Whitney. But yeah, so this is the birthday of the Bank of England, and make of that what you will. And before we go today, I want to talk about something that is often portrayed in a very negative light, and I want to look at it more positively, and that is unpredictability. It is often portrayed negatively, but why? It's because people can't control you when you're unpredictable. Yes, sometimes it can be problematic, right? We all know those people who are unpredictable and just create problems, but I'm not talking about that kind of unpredictability. I'm talking about being unpredictable as a superpower. And here's why I think that is possible. When people don't know how you will react or what you will do next, they struggle to control you. Being a naturally unpredictable creature myself, I thought I should start to look at the benefits of unpredictability. And again, I'm not talking about unpredictable in terms of turning up to a posh dinner party looking as if you've been dragged through 10 hedges. I'm not talking about that. That's disrespect. I'm talking about moving yourself away from a limbo state that will keep you active, that will keep you youthful, and that will enable you to be more creative. Let me just delve into this a bit more. Unpredictability allows for true creativity. And the reason I say that is because history tells us that. Many inventions have come about when the inventor least expected those inventions to, when they were looking at something else, when they were focusing on something else. The unpredictable nature of the emergence of an idea set them off on another path. And the thing is, too many people follow trends, very sheep-like, right? It's sometimes too obvious. you become part of the pack. If you look at it from another perspective, instead of following the trends, would it not be simpler to start your own trend and have others follow you? The best way, as they say, to predict the future is to create it. So first of all, I want to say hooray for unpredictability in terms of creativity, because how is it possible to really branch out and create something new if you're just following the same old of what everybody else is doing? Logically, it doesn't even make any sense. So instead of waiting for others to set the trend, why not lead yourself? Plan a new course to create a new direction. Is it not easier to control yourself first and figure out what makes you unique? Remember, we were talking about what makes you unique on a recent show, and to work out what is it that you can offer that does not already exist in this world. Because I do believe that there are things, excuse me, that are new under the sun. You know, I'm getting into this because I need a slug of water. Talk to me about unpredictability, people in the live chat. How are you doing? How are you doing? This live chat has just zoomed past. Just getting excited as my electric scooter is fixed and I'm going out to play, says Crazy Bunny. Gary says sometimes novelty is found in the past. Angie says breaking patterns in your life. I invented bad humor years ago. Not my best invention, says Cavan. I don't know. I think it's fairly good. HK Very says, oh, yes, uncertainty and unpredictability paves the way for unseen possibilities. Vanessa feels as free as a bird. Spontaneous too. Love spontaneity. Choose Love says, yes, when you don't fit in a box. And that is the important thing here, isn't it? It's about branching out and being something different. And here's the other thing about unpredictability is it captures attention. I think of a quote from Tiber Kalman, who said, I am interested in imperfections, quirkiness, insanity, unpredictability. That's what we really pay attention to anyway. We don't talk about planes flying. We talk about them crashing. Now, that's true, right? Anything that is part of the norm, we just ignore it. It becomes part of the furniture. But anything which is different, and I hope it doesn't have to be a crash in order for it to stand out. But I take that point. I really do. And also, unpredictability is useful because people want something new to talk about. And, you know, we are social creatures and communication is a way for us to form bonds and relationships. And what better way than something unpredictable, something new, something unusual, something different, right? Think how unpredictability moves us when it comes to entertainment. We don't want obvious storylines. They bore us. Boy Meets Girl is dull. We want different. We want to be kept on the edge of our seats. We want more. We deserve more. We're discerning. People want more because they don't know what they're going to get. That is the beauty of unpredictability, and it's good for business. And I'll tell you how it's good for business, because businesses can follow change and make adjustments to surprise and keep their audiences engaged. Who doesn't like a good surprise? Again, I'm not talking about unpredictability in a negative sense. I'm talking about you realizing who you are and bringing that forth and perhaps catching people off guard. But it is also useful in trying situations, because if people cannot predict what your next movement is, you can outwit them. I do it all the time and I love it. So life is unpredictable. So instead of planning everything, why not flow with how nature intended? Every day is unpredictable and you just have to go with that flow. None of us know if we will see out this day. We simply don't, right? So for me, you need to live every day to your fullest, and being unpredictable is a huge part of that. The real enemies of life, in my opinion, are the oughts, the shoulds, the what ifs, all of that. They pull us backwards into this kind of past that we can do nothing about, or a forward that, or a future that we can do nothing about except for prepare for. Okay, remember what John Lennon said in his song Beautiful Boy? Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Plans are great. Plans are brilliant. But sometimes diverting from plans is the way forward. Definitely. You know, the fact is, it is my experience that you can plan all you want, but life and the universe will not always go along with it. Our lives are already so regimented in so many respects. They're like regimented operations. Many of us begin the day being woken up by an alarm shrieking for us to wake up. So if you can introduce any kind of unpredictability into your schedule, so much the better. And unpredictability is flexibility. It will keep you and the world on its toes. And I love that idea. And, it's not a soft skill, as one quote, and I couldn't find the source of this, reminded me, it's a hardcore badass strategy for dealing with the unpredictable, and that's flexibility. Adapt or be left behind, and being able to adapt to unpredictability is also a superpower. Rowie wants to become a traveling shaman in my bow top wagon. I love that. Gary wants to counteract the fear porn with hope and imagination. I'm in. Me too. Everything has devolved. Rachel, which quote did you love, my darling? Was it, I love that quote. I always say this about having a disabled child. Bless you. Got to believe in yourself, says Irish Fairy Tarot. And so that kind of brings us to the end of our show today, lovely people. It's 4 minutes past 11. You keep keeping me on longer than I intend to, but what the hell, right? Marie, unpredictability can bring a myriad of opportunities. Love that. Thank you, Amy. So says she loves that wonderful advice. Crazy Bunny, I wish Sonia would. Would what? What is Crazy Bunny offering me up for? Who can ever tell? I just want to say thank you so much, my wonderful mods here, Crazy Bunny and our lovely Shin. Healing the silences, be open to change and learn to enjoy it. We're usually hesitant to enjoy change because we want to control everything. To have control, you must give it up. The John Lennon quote, Rachel. Well, you know how it is with quotes, right? I then wanted to source that it was definitely him because it was on that song. And some claim it actually originated from writer Alan Saunders. But the point is still there. It's a fabulous quote. Plan all you want, but life and the universe often have different ideas. So thank you all. Thank you to the wonderful chatters. Thank you to everybody sending me emails. Thank you to the donations. Thank you to the contributions. Thank you for showing up at any point of this broadcast, whether it's live or on playback. I love you all so much. Have a terrific, terrific Friday. Have a terrific weekend. See you on Monday, and be as unpredictable as you want, because it's your life and you deserve it. Take good care of yourself. See you Monday, folks. Have a lovely, lovely weekend. Take care.